There are letters I wrote but never sent, words I whispered to the wind, hoping they'd reach you someday. This is the story of a love that never truly ended, even as time moved on and seasons changed. A love that lingered in silence between the pages of the letters I never had the courage to send.
I never thought I would write this down. Not like this. But as I sit here with the weight of your silence pressing against my chest, I find that words are all I have left. Not words to heal or to beg or to make sense of what we became, just words to breathe. I remember the day we met like it was folded carefully in the corner of my memory. You stood by the campus gate, that same crooked smile already playing on your lips, as if you knew something about me I hadn't learned yet. Your hair was a mess, your shirt half untucked, and you looked at me like I was the only person in a crowd that didn't matter. We didn't fall in love instantly. No, it was slower than that, like winter thawing into spring. It was stolen glances during lectures, a shared umbrella in the rain, fingers that brushed just long enough to question, and then it was your name in my phone at 2 a.m, saying nothing and everything all at once. I've kept every message. Even now, some broken, some banal, but all yours. You once wrote to me, "We're not promises, we're maybes with good intentions." I laughed. You always had a way of romanticizing what you feared, and now I'm writing to you in a letter I'll never send. You won't read it. You won't know how long I sat here with my hands trembling over every line. But maybe, somewhere in the universe, where our timelines run parallel instead of apart, you'll feel this. I loved you like a slow song, one that never had a chorus, just verses that hoped you'd stay. There is a specific Tuesday in November that never leaves me. It wasn't our first kiss, or the first fight, or even the day you left. It was just a day. Cold. Soft light spilling through your curtains like it was shy to wake you up. I was already awake. I watched you sleep for what felt like hours, your chest rising and falling, in rhythm with the soft hum of the heater. You looked peaceful, like all the noise you carried had finally gone silent in your dreams. I made coffee that morning, black for you, sweet and milky for me. You hated mornings, but you smiled when I handed you the cup, and that smile, that half-awake, lazy curve of your lips, stayed with me longer than it should have. We didn't say much. You played a song on your phone, one of those indie tracks with lyrics that felt like secrets. I didn't ask what it meant to you, I just listened, holding your warmth in my hands. We stayed in bed longer than usual. No plans, no responsibilities. Just two people, wrapped in a cocoon of what felt like forever. And I remember thinking, this is what love should feel like. Not the rush, not the fire, but the quiet certainty that even in silence, you were my favorite sound. I didn't write that down then. I thought I'd remember it forever. But memory has a cruel way of editing moments, softening them until you start to wonder if they were real at all. So I write it now, because I need to believe it happened exactly as I felt it. That day mattered, even if it didn't come with fireworks or farewells. Maybe love isn't a string of dramatic events. Maybe it's that Tuesday in November, the coffee, the heater, the quiet, you turning to me half asleep, whispering, "Don't go just yet." We talked about everything, and yet said so little that truly mattered. Maybe that's the irony of love. You speak so much of the world, of plans, of what-ifs, and maybe some days, but you skip over the deepest truths because they're too heavy, too sacred. Or maybe we were just afraid that if we said them out loud, they'd become real enough to hurt. You used to joke about us living in some small apartment with plants you'd forget to water and books I'd keep piling up on every surface. We'd fight over coffee mugs and who left the window open. You'd laugh. And I laughed too, not because it was funny, but because I could see it. I could see you in the kitchen, barefoot, still half asleep, cursing under your breath at how I rearranged the spice rack again. I could hear the sound of our fights echoing softly into our forgiveness. But we never said, "I love you," not once, not even in those quiet moments after everything else was said. I wonder if you were waiting for me the same way I was waiting for you. I wonder if the silence between us was filled with words we were both too stubborn or scared to speak. Maybe the words would have changed everything. Maybe they would have made us braver, or maybe they would have broken us sooner. There was one night, late in December, when I almost said it. You were asleep on the floor after we argued, too tired to move, too proud to return to the bed. I sat beside you, watched the rise and fall of your back, and whispered, "I think I'm falling in love with you," so softly, even the walls couldn't hear me. You stirred a little, but never opened your eyes. I wish you had. Maybe we were a story of almosts, almost enough, almost forever, almost brave, but never quite. And now, in this letter, I say it because there's no one left to interrupt, no fear to swallow my voice. I loved you. I love you still. You left your red scarf at my place, the one you always said you hated, the one you claimed itched your neck and made you look like someone's lost grandmother. But you wore it anyway. Every winter, every cold morning walk to the coffee shop, every grocery run where the wind bit through your coat like it had teeth. I never told you, but I loved that scarf. Not because it was pretty, it wasn't. It was worn, the fabric thinning at the edges, a thread loose here and there. But it reminded me of you, stubborn, familiar, a little frayed, but warm. I found it again yesterday, folded at the bottom of the drawer I never open unless I'm missing you. It still smelled like you, somehow. Cinnamon and something colder, sharper, like the air that clung to your hair. I held it close to my chest, and for a moment, it was like your arms were there, wrapping around me from behind like you used to, when neither of us knew what to say. Funny how something so ordinary can carry so much weight. A piece of fabric becomes a time machine. A forgotten scarf turns into a chapter I'm not ready to close. I remember the last time you wore it. We were arguing again. I was pacing the room. You stood by the door, wrapped in that red scarf like armor. I kept saying things I didn't mean. You kept trying to stay silent. But your eyes were loud, louder than anything I was screaming. You left without saying goodbye, just walked out into the cold. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, waiting for the sound of your footsteps returning. It never came. I used to imagine you left it behind on purpose, that maybe, deep down, you wanted me to hold on to something that still had a part of you. But now, I'm not so sure. Maybe you really did hate that scarf. Maybe you forgot it in the mess of everything else unraveling between us. Still, I keep it. I can't throw it away. Because in a world where everything has changed, your red scarf remains the same. And maybe that's enough. If you ever read this, I hope it's a rainy night. Not because I want you to feel sad, but because there's something honest about the rain, how it doesn't hide, how it falls even when no one's watching. That's how these words feel, unhidden, undeniable, and maybe a little too late. I wonder what you'd think, sitting there, wherever you are now. Would you laugh at me for being so sentimental? Would you roll your eyes and say, "There she goes again," like you used to every time I cried during movies, or wrote long captions under old photos? Or would you pause just for a second and let yourself feel it too? Because I meant all of it. Every single letter, every story wrapped in memory, every silence filled with words I didn't know how to say when you were still listening. You once told me I was good with words. Too good, you said. Sometimes it's dangerous. I never understood what you meant until I realized I was better at writing about love than living it. I could fill pages with things I never said to you, and none of it ever reached your ears. Sometimes I wonder if we'd still be together if I had said things differently, softer, or louder, or more often. Would it have made you stay? Would it have made me stay? Or were we always meant to be a story that ended before it truly began? There are nights I still dream about you. Sometimes we're just walking, nowhere in particular. You're wearing that black jacket you always hated, and I'm complaining about how you never let me pick the music. And then I wake up, and the silence is sharp enough to cut through the dream. You're not here. You haven't been for a long time. But if you're reading this, it means a part of you is still reaching back, even if just to glance at the wreckage. Maybe you're not looking for answers, just echoes. I have plenty of those. I hope you found what you were looking for. I hope you learned how to stay, even if it wasn't with me. And if you ever wonder if you were loved, yes, without hesitation, without question, even now. There's a photograph of you I never framed. It's tucked between pages of an old book, one we used to read on quiet Sundays, when the world outside slowed just enough to let us breathe. You're not even looking at the camera. You're laughing, head tilted slightly, a ray of sunlight cutting across your cheekbone. Your hands are mid-motion, maybe reaching for your mug, or maybe brushing my knee, like you always did when you thought no one was watching. I remember thinking, in that moment, that I wanted to remember you exactly like that forever. But I never framed it. I couldn't, because framing it felt too final, like sealing you into a box behind glass. And I wasn't ready for that, not then, not now. So I left it inside the book, where it could hide, where I could pretend it was just misplaced, not buried, not avoided. There's something cruel about how memory works. It doesn't fade, like everyone says. It sharpens. The more I try to forget, the more vivid it becomes. Your laugh echoes louder. The softness in your eyes glows brighter. The way your shoulders moved when you were cold. The way you exhaled slowly before saying something important. Every detail becomes more precise the further away you are. Sometimes I wonder what that means. If forgetting is truly impossible when someone left an imprint on your days. Or maybe we don't forget at all, we just carry their outlines in quieter ways. Like a photo never framed, like a letter never sent. If I framed it now, would it be admitting that you're gone? That there's nothing left to wait for? Maybe that's why I keep it hidden. Maybe I'm afraid that once it's on the wall, you'll never come back. And I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of truth. The book is still there, spine cracked, corners curled, pages soft with time. And tucked inside, your photo waits, not forgotten, just paused. You were my ending, before I even knew the story had begun. It's strange to realize that I was already building a world around you before I understood what we were. Before the first, I love you. Before the long walks that ended in silence. Before the arguments that left us both tired and confused. Before I even knew how to love the right way. I used to think love was supposed to be obvious. Loud, bright, the kind that everyone notices. That you weren't like that. You were quiet, subtle, full of glances instead of declarations, touch instead of promises. And maybe I misunderstood that quiet for distance. Maybe I wanted too much, too fast. Maybe I didn't understand that some people love in whispers instead of songs. But now, looking back, I see how much you gave without saying a word. How you remembered the smallest things, like how I couldn't sleep without music, or how I hated drinking coffee from ceramic mugs. How you always walked on the side of the sidewalk, closer the cars, without ever pointing it out. How you never once forgot the date of my mother's passing. That was your way. That was love. And me? I was too busy trying to make it feel like a movie. I wanted fireworks, grand gestures, dramatic confessions. I thought love had to be loud to be real. And in that noise, I missed the quiet truth that you gave every day. You were there in every small moment, in the way you'd wait for me to get home before eating, in the way you never left without saying goodbye, even if we were fighting, in the way you sat beside me when I didn't want to talk, just so I wouldn't be alone. You were constant, and I didn't realize that constancy was the rarest kind of love there is. Now, in the stillness, I understand. You weren't perfect, but you were present. You didn't always have the right words, but you stayed. You didn't fix me, but you never left me broken either. So yes, maybe you were my ending, but you were also the part of the story that taught me how to begin again. The day you left, there was no storm, no slammed doors, no shouted words that echoed down the hall. You simply left, quietly, like a chapter ending without warning. I didn't even know it was the last time until the silence grew heavy, until I turned around and you weren't there. You had this way of slipping away from things you didn't want to ruin. You always said goodbyes were too loud, too final, and maybe that's why you chose not to say it. Maybe you thought leaving quietly was kinder. But what you didn't know, what you couldn't have known, is that silence can scream too. I looked for signs afterward, tried to piece together what I missed. Was it the way you paused before speaking the last few weeks? The way your hugs felt longer, like they were holding on for a little more time? Or maybe it was how you stopped dreaming out loud, stopped making those small plans about someday. I should have known then. I think a part of me did, but I refused to name it. We always imagine the end as something violent, as something you can point to and say, there, that's where it broke. But endings like ours don't leave cracks, they dissolve. They fade so gently you mistake it for calm, for comfort, until the quiet isn't warm anymore, until the absence is louder than presence ever was. There's a space on my bed where you used to sleep that still curves the way your body did. I haven't laid anything there since, not out of hope, but because that empty curve is the only honest part left. It doesn't pretend, it doesn't make excuses, it simply reminds me, you were here, and now you're not. Sometimes I whisper your name when I'm alone, not because I expect you to hear it, but because I need to remember how it feels in my mouth. Because if I stop saying it, I'm afraid I'll lose that last thread that connects us. You didn't say goodbye, and maybe that's the hardest part. There's no closure when someone slips through your days like a ghost. There's only echoes, only questions, only the weight of what's missing. Still, I hope wherever you are now, you think of me when the rain hits your window. I hope you remember the warmth even if you couldn't stay for it. If you had stayed, maybe we would have grown tired of each other. Maybe we would have argued about dishes and bills, about what show to watch or how late you always came home. Maybe the magic would have faded, replaced by routine and sighs and the subtle distance that creeps in when two people live side by side, but not together. Maybe we would have broken anyway, slowly and painfully, in all the ways people do when love turns into habit, but maybe not. Maybe we would have built something better, something quieter, something deeper, a love that doesn't need to shout to feel real, a love that survives the mundane, the repetition, the years of waking up beside each other with the same tired eyes, but still reaching for the same hand. Maybe we would have learned how to stay, even when staying was hard. I wonder sometimes if you think about it too, if you lie awake at night, imagining a version of us that never ended. Do you see me older? Do you imagine what my laugh sounds like now? If I still drink too much coffee or sing when I cook? I wonder what your smile looks like today. If the lines around your eyes have deepened. If your heart still tugs at the sound of my name. In that life, I like to think we live in a small place near the sea. It's not perfect. There are arguments, slammed doors, moments of silence. But there's also forgiveness. There's the smell of your shirt on rainy mornings and the way you still make me tea without asking. There's space to be ourselves and space to grow. You hold my hand at the market, not because you have to, but because you want to. We argue about what kind of bread to buy, and you always pick the wrong one on purpose, because you know I'll complain, and that makes you laugh. We still leave little notes for each other in books, between pages we've read and loved. Maybe that world doesn't exist, but it lives in me, in the corners of my mind where I keep us safe, in the letters I never sent, in the parts of my heart that still beat in rhythm with yours, even now. If you had stayed, we might not have made it, but oh, how beautiful it would have been to try. This is the letter I never meant to write, but somehow always knew I would. It's not filled with blame or longing, not soaked in regret or bitter what-ifs. It's not even a plea for return. This letter is simply acknowledgement, a quiet bow to a love that changed me, shaped me, and left me more human than it found me. We were not perfect. God knows we stumbled. But somewhere between all our messes and apologies, something beautiful was born. Something real. Even if it didn't last. Even if it slipped through our fingers like water. It was ours. And nothing can take that away. Time has passed. Seasons have shifted. The way the sun hits the floor in the morning is different now. And so am I. I no longer search for you in crowds. I no longer check my phone hoping for a name I erased long ago. But I do remember. And maybe that's enough. You were a chapter I never finished, a melody I still hum without realizing. You live in my metaphors, in the way I write silence and space and longing. You are the soft ache in every almost, the shadow behind the word once. I've fallen in love again, once or twice. It never felt the same, but it didn't need to. Love isn't meant to be replicated. It's meant to evolve. And still, in every heartbeat that chooses to stay, there's a part of you whispering what love taught me. Patience, surrender, and the quiet power of letting go. This letter is not for you, really. It's for the parts of myself I buried with you, for the girl who waited for a message that never came, for the woman who grew from the waiting, for the version of me who now understands that not all love stories end in forever, and that doesn't make them failures. I'll never send this. I don't need to. Writing it is the closure I never had. It is the goodbye you never gave, and the peace I finally found. Wherever you are, I hope you're well. I hope you're laughing again. I hope someone is holding your hand the way I used to, or better. Thank you for loving me when you could, for leaving when you had to, for becoming the reason I now know how strong a heart can be.
Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. See you again. Bye bye.